appoint Planning Commission meeting, and I will call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the February 12th, 2019 minutes.
I move they be approved as submitted.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of that motion?
No?
If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion passed. Council liaison report. Councilman Maroney.
We had at the city council meeting a life-saving award from Officer Jay Lorch. He was presented with a award. Again, something we've frequently done at the city council for our law enforcement and paramedic teams there. We did have our audit presentation for 2018, so that went very well from Clifton Larson Allen. We talked a little bit about the improvements for the White Birch, Papago, Suffolk. We've ordered plans for that. Pequot Fire Lakes contract was extended. We also ordered, I should have mentioned it last fall if I didn't, but we ordered a new squad car early. The squad car is not going to be made. Ford canceled about half their orders for the 2019 version. We did so to try to save some money. They gave us a discount though on a 2020 version, so the council went ahead and approved that purchase. You will also see we are going to be changing some city hall office hours. Staff discussed, and those hours are now going to be Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 instead of 8 to 4:30. And the last thing was golf carts on county roads within the city limits. You all may recall that we approached the county during the ATV ordinance asking for golf carts to be permitted with the ATVs. That fell at the county level, and so we reapproached them and have been continuing to work with them on allowing golf carts on the shoulders or extreme right-of-ways of the county roads. And we finally made progress with the committee that will be passing on to the county board with hopefully an adoption by May 14th is the goal. So very brief of a very long meeting. If anybody's got any questions or if Patrick needs to fill anything else in.
Any questions?
So it would be 4 and 11?
4, 11, and technically County Road 39. However, I personally don't see much use on that road, but
Yeah.
yes, 4 and 11, we would be allowing golf carts the same as ATV Class 1s and 2s on the extreme shoulder of the road.
A comment, I don't know if it's a question, but with my involvement on the comprehensive planning program, it seems to be a strong will of the people to expand the allowance and use of golf carts. The only thing I would caution is that if we're going to do it, we're going to have to enforce the rules, which means no drivers under 15, and it means stop them if they're drinking. That's my comment, so.
Yep, and those are things that we continue doing on the city roads, but yes, they'd be very prevalent on the county roads to be enforcing those.
Thank you, Mike. We'll then move to open forum number 1. Would anyone like to speak during open forum number 1? If not, we'll close open forum number 1 to the public hearing to consider the White Birch Inc. Proposal. David, are you going to do a presentation, Jerry?
Actually, I anticipated that the applicant would do the presentation before I made any comments, because I think he's going to cover everything that I would comment on. So,
Okay, this is a public hearing, and David, maybe you could introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is David Landecker, 8581 Wren Drive, Breezy Point, Minnesota. I'm representing White Birch Incorporated in regards to the application for the preliminary plat and final plat of expansion of White Birch Village. As you recall, Planning Commission, I've been in front of you several times, but most recently was January, and I kind of went through the, kind of the purpose or this particular plat at that moment, just to kind of appraise you as to where we were at in the planning process. And I pretty much have the same slide presentation that I did then. I've added this final slides of the plan that you have in front of you tonight. But I know that there's at least one interested party in the audience, so I'll go through them as quickly as I can, just to, they're here. And if you have questions, we can go back to the slides and look at them, or if you have questions, we can do that. But as you recall, so the zoning currently in that area is resort, or it's R4 and resort commercial golf courses and golf course pieces that are being added to it. If you recall, the original plat was approved by the Planning Commission back actually in 2008. And since that time, the property, or the first phase of the project has been platted and developed, and there's been a minor subdivision or a plat change that occurred within that, during that time frame. So from 2014 to 2017, the plat got recorded, the buildings have been built, and people have been occupied. This kind of shows you that original plat layout is the plat that you're looking at here. This was actually presented and approved back in 2008. And that's what it looks like. We developed, like I say, the first phase has been developed, and now we're looking at the second phase, which is the middle portion of it. The number of units haven't changed. The number of units are the same. We've added some additional real estate to accommodate how the land is being used now, but also to accommodate, we've moved the buildings a little bit further apart. The current buildings in the first edition were anywhere from 15 feet up, because the ordinance allows for the duplexes to be 15 feet apart. In the new plan that we were submitting, the units will be, the closest unit is like 18 feet, so they go to 18 to 22, and some spread out more than that. But just generally, there's nothing as close as what was in the first edition, to give more room for landscaping in between, some of the sidewalks that are in there, and just, and because of that, it's spread out, the overall development spread out, where we needed to kind of move further to the south and west in phase 3. But again, the number of units don't change, the density stays the same, the impervious coverage actually stays the same, so everything kind of stays the same, nearly identically as it was approved in 2008. So I think you can, I know that Patrick is just kind of going through this, an aerial view of the land now as it's constructed. So this is the phase 2 plat that we're looking to get approved tonight. This is what you're actually approving, lots 1 through 22, so it'd be 11 duplexes. The interior road is private. Ultimately, you can kind of see the ghost plan for phase 3 on the left-hand side. The driveway will ultimately end up connecting back out onto Suffolk, so it will be all internally driven. We do have a connection from Papico to White Birch Drive, because a couple of reasons. One, safety, to allow residents in and out so they aren't all traveling down that road, but then there's also municipal sewer that'll be going down that road on an easement for maintenance and use of that for the city's purposes. Yes.
The sewer line will go under White Birch Drive?
Yeah, I think there's a slide here that will show the sewer ultimately. Yeah, so here's the slide. So the sewer is the black line. You can see I've labeled the sewer on the top.
Yep.
Comes down and then it tees and goes both right and left. And that would serve this new addition. as Mr. Maroney had indicated, the city authorized Woodson Smith and Nolte, the city engineer, to start proceeding on building plans to accommodate not only this, but the residents along the other roads that it serves. So that sewer needs to be designed and ultimately constructed, but that's generally where it would go as it's shown on that plan. The water system, I showed there's a well down on the lower left-hand side of the drawing. You can see it's in pink, and it will come up between unit 17 and 16, and then again kind of follow south of the sewer system. There's a required setback that's mandated by statute that would need to be, I believe it's 10 feet. So the laterals will all come into the buildings off of that. Stormwater is being managed by those areas which are highlighted in green. Most of the impervious in the buildings are draining to the north, and so that would go into some depressions that will be constructed. One of them is kind of there already. If you're familiar with the site, there's an area where they borrowed some gravel or dirt for the construction of the first phase, and we're actually accommodating or utilizing part of that area for stormwater, and then it would ultimately go into the larger pond that's on the west. On the front of the units towards the golf course, we'll just be doing sort of more of a swale in the front of the lawns, where it will be all mowable, so it'll just look like lawn, but it'll have a depression in it that will be flowing from the east towards the west. So they'll all be interconnected, those three green triangles you see down below there. So all stormwater can actually be handled on the site to meet the city code requirements. I'm not sure if that might be the last slide, isn't it?
That is the last slide, the last one is questions, so.
Yeah, so that's, so again, I mean, tonight we're here to essentially affirm we had the preliminary plat that was already approved, so we're just kind of modifying that or amending the layout of that, and then approving the final plat that would be in conjunction with that preliminary plat. So units 1 through 22, and then the common areas that would be associated with that. Any questions?
The sewer, the main line goes from the units, goes essentially north, back down towards 11, County 11,
Yes.
and then,
If I might,
yeah,
from this development, it goes down Papago, all the way to the end of Papago, crosses over to Creek Circle, where it hooks up into an existing sanitary sewer system that flows gravity to County Road 11.
okay. And then how does it get back to the treatment plant, or the treatment area?
At County Road 11 by the ice arena, there's a lift station there that's pumping it all the way to through our system.
Okay. And capacity is okay?
That is a correct answer, and I should say that, yeah, when we're looking at this subdivision, it flows into a proposal that we've got for the larger system that will also include all of Suffolk, Circle and Suffolk Drive, Papago, and then there's a couple houses on White Birch. But in this specific case, I guess if it's appropriate, I would just back up a little bit. When we looked at this subdivision, the initial subdivision of townhouses, and that's to the right of this map, each of those individual townhouses actually had to run a service line to White Birch Road, and so you had, what was it, 22 units? 18 units, with 18 lines going there. When we look at this new subdivision, we thought we'd learn something from that, and that's why we're having a main line come from Papago onto their property where we'll have an easement, and then each of the service lines will be a much shorter process. Part of it is initiated just because we also have, you see the two big green ponds. It would be really hard to go underneath those with service lines, and it's much more cost effective this way. Helps out actually the entire project by doing it this way.
Other questions?
You can put manholes and stuff in there, and so it's easier to.
That'll be all part of the design work. We haven't seen that yet because they haven't drawn it up, but yes.
Yeah, essentially it'll be a municipal sewer system, just like we have in the urban areas here in the city.
Any other questions?
So what action are we supposed to be taking tonight?
We are going to be approving the preliminary and final plat, correct, Jerry?
That's what's proposed. That's what the applicant is requesting.
Yes.
I think 2 separate actions, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So preliminary plat action and then after the final plat action.
Thank you, David. Jerry, you'd like to go through your staff review?
Actually, my staff report is basically the presentation that he just made. Again, the conditional use for 52 units of the townhouse was approved in 2008. 2010, the final plat for the first phase was approved. The development agreement for the first phase was signed in 2013, and the first phase started in 2014, and now that first phase is completed. The second phase is proposed to be 22 units. The only change that is there is some separation between the units that was, as it was proposed, from when it was proposed back in 2008. The project is proposed to be serviced by municipal sewer. The city is proceeding with plans to provide service to this area and the adjacent areas that are single-family residential at this point. There's a few minor changes. They've added a few parcels from the golf course piece of property to the townhouse property, and that accommodates storm sewer and a little extra green space and those type of things. The staff would find that the proposed preliminary plat and final plat is consistent with the CUP that was approved in 2008. The proposed development is consistent with R4 zoning. Development will be served by municipal sewer. Mailed and published notice of this hearing and any preceding hearings was held. The final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat, and the preliminary plat and final plat is consistent with the subdivision ordinance. So basically the findings are that this development is consistent with the ordinances that we have in place and the CUP that was approved in 2008. Staff would recommend that the preliminary plat of common interest community number 1107 be approved and recommend to the city council approval. Staff would further recommend that the final plat of common interest community number 1107 be approved by the planning commission, and planning commission recommends approval to the city council. It's not uncommon to take final or preliminary plat action and final plat action when there's basically no changes between the two. The other thing it does, it accommodates probably about 2 months of extra time that it takes because of the timing of planning commission in relationship to city council. These actions that the planning commission has taken are recommendations to the city council. Final action is required by the city council on both proposals.
Questions of the city planner? Roger?
No.
Tracy?
Do we have any other comments?
That would be next.
Okay.
Yeah. Michael?
No, I don't have any.
No, I have no
Okay.
comments.
Is there any public input to this plan? Roger?
Thank you.
Would you introduce yourself, Roger?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
My name is Roger Okerman. This is my wife Sandy. We live at 7244 Fairway Lane, which is about in the middle of the existing project. And we're here simply to show our support for the approval of the ongoing projects. But I thought it might be nice to hear from a person who lives in the area, family who lives in the area and lives in the houses and so forth that have been built, because you folks see it from a different perspective of the architects, the engineers, the surveyors, etc. We have to live with what there is there and how things are done, and we want to express our feelings to what White Birch has done. They've done a very nice project. The buildings are well constructed, of quality materials. We've been there now just about 2 years, and there's been some that have been out there, about 4 from the original project. They do what they say they're gonna do. Snow plowing was done, shoveling of the sidewalks were done, the lawn mowing was done, the architectural flowers and shrubs were trimmed and cleaned and this sort of thing. And they seem to take pride if we have any issues out there. We had a street light issue, they took care of that right away. They seem to be Johnny on the spot. We've lived in the area off and on for 27, 28, 29 years, and lived on the lake for 21, and then we sold and moved to Florida for 5, and now we've been back for 2. So it was quite a surprise and pleasant surprise to see this happening in the community, plus other structures that have been rehabbed and rebuilt and new ones and so forth. But we just want to show our support that things are being done, they appear to be done properly. I used to sit on the P&Z in Anoka for about 12 years, so I know what you wrestle with all the time, and sometimes the developers and the contractors and electricians, etc., don't do the projects like they're supposed to do. And from our perspective, from what we've seen, they are very attentive. So just want to go on record that we support the moving ahead with this additional units, and hope you agree to do it.
Thank you, Roger. Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone? If not, I'll close the public hearing and move to official action. I would entertain a motion to act on the city planner's recommendation in the memo that we have in our packet.
I would move to approve, you want 2 separate?
Yes.
Okay, I would move to approve the preliminary.
And to recommend it to the city council? Tracy?
Yes, and
Okay.
to recommend it to the city council.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passed. We will then move to the next item, which is approval of the final plat. And again, the city planner has a recommendation in the memo we have in our packet. Someone,
So I'll make a motion that we
Okay.
approve the final plat on the common interest community number 1107 and recommend it.
good.
And I would second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passed. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is consider Metz and Bounds subdivision. Galen Vander, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Vanderlooth.
Pardon me?
Vanderlooth.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Got it now. We did have a discussion of this at our last meeting, correct, Gary?
Actually, no, it was probably 2-3 months ago.
Was that long?
And
Okay.
there was a discussion about the potential for a rezoning. And Mr. Vanderlooth has decided to go a different route, and he is proposing to create a one-lot subdivision on 38 acres. That 38 acres today contains a single-family dwelling that was built in 2015. There's a conservation easement placed on the west 23 plus or minus acres in 2017. Mr. Vanderloot wishes to divide a 5.1 acre parcel from the existing 38 acre parcel. There's an attached survey in your package. Shows the meets and bounds parcel. The proposed parcel conforms to the requirements of the ELR zoning. The parcel qualifies for a meets and bounds subdivision under 152.40. Access to the existing parcel is proposed to be a 66-foot ingress and egress easement across the adjacent 20 acres owned by Christopher Lindholm. And the survey document defines a 40-foot ingress and egress easement on Mr. Vanderloot's current property. These easements are considered a private roadway and would require a private road access agreement as per section 152.21. The estate lots residential qualifies for meets and bounds subdivision, and then there is an easement established for ingress and egress. Staff would recommend that the Planning Commission approve the meets and bounds subdivision as per Mr. Vanderloot's request and the survey that is enclosed as part of your package.
Any questions of Jerry?
Okay, you're educating me. At some time, 23 plus or minus acres was placed in a conservation easement. That does not include any of the land that we're talking about now, is it?
This 5 acres is not included in that conservation
Okay,
easement.
Because, and again, you're educating me. It would seem to me that there was quite a tax benefit for them to put it into the conservation easement. And this is in no way getting anything back from that.
No,
Totally separate.
no. The only thing the conservation easement does on the 23 acres that are designated is it doesn't allow for any development to happen.
Yeah, but generally it means a reduction, I think, well, whatever.
I'm not an accountant, nor do
Well, I'm not
I,
either, but
I'm not involved in it. I don't know what those things are.
I have been under the impression that that allows some form of a tax benefit, but you are not getting anything back from that area that had.
We are not taking anything away from that at all.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Actually, that 23 acres is
West.
west of
further
this
west.
piece.
Okay, one more question. Do they have the road agreement that we say they're gonna have to have?
I don't know if that's been established yet, but there is a document showing on the survey. And that will establish the easement, whether there's an agreement. I think that's probably going to come with the sale of the lot.
So at this point, the planning commission would not be concerned with that road easement? That's
No,
not part of-
we would need to see an easement of some kind before any other permits or anything else would be built on that piece of
or
property.
building permits, but
Right.
the subdivision can occur without that road.
Yes. It becomes critical at the time that there's another user.
Right.
Roger, do you have any questions?
No, you answered my question there, so.
I would entertain a motion.
Not very good at wording these motions, but I was moved to do what Jerry recommends.
Meets and bounds.
Yeah. Let's see.
So the motion is approval of this meets and bounds subdivision request.
Subdivision by meets and bounds. I would recommend that we approve that subdivision.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we
Can I
have a
clarify
motion
that
and a
motion?
second.
Can I clarify that motion?
Patrick, yes.
The very last paragraph of Jerry's letter or email memo identifies staff further recommends approval requiring filing and recording of private road access agreements across easements and covenants. So you want that included in there, Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
I thought so, that's why I was writing it
Yes,
that way.
that's,
Okay, and Roger?
Yeah.
Okay,
Second.
any discussion?
No, after you clarify, that's
Okay.
good.
All in favor of that motion, say aye.
aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion passed. Next item on our agenda is other. Is there anything else that we need to add to the agenda?
Aren't we reviewing the?
Oh, I'm
existing
sorry,
company?
yeah, I skipped over that. The next item on the agenda is review of sections of the existing comprehensive plan. We were actually given homework to review this after a comprehensive plan meeting, and I bet we've all done our homework. Jerry, do you have something to add?
Well, in anticipation that you have done your homework,
Okay,
I am not anticipating, unless you want to, going through these sections piece by piece. What I anticipated would happen was that you folks would, if you've gone through this, if there's something that you don't think belongs in the new comprehensive plan, please let us know what those sections are. We'll highlight them and we'll take that to the committee. Otherwise, I would assume if you don't have any issues with these sections, I'm assuming that the majority of this language is going to stay in the revised comp plan.
With a few updates.
With a few updates, yeah. It won't be word for word, but it's basically the gist of the land use sections.
Right.
I'm always impressed with the amount of good work that was done on this comprehensive plan. One of the things that strikes me, though, is that there is a lot of direction coming out of this work that was done on the comprehensive plan. And I'm not always clear who's being directed, whether we are as a city, or as the planning commission or the city council is being directed. One thing that's clear to me is we're being directed to review ordinances that affect land use. It's pretty clear about that.
Well, I think we've all had a little bit of confusion about the process, and I think that's starting to refine itself and define itself as we go. I think the last time we met with the consultant, the consensus was that there's some land use language in the existing plan that is very good. It was good in 2010, and it's still good today because things haven't changed that much, and that rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, that it might be a better idea to redefine some of the things that are in this existing document and use that language if it's still, or use the concept per se, and use that because it's still pertinent. There hasn't been, as far as from a land use standpoint, there hasn't been that much change from now, or from 2010 till now.
Would you agree, Jerry? It seems to me that we're being directed by this comprehensive plan to do some things that we haven't done yet.
Well,
Is that correct?
you know, if you take a look at a comprehensive plan, and it gives you some goals and some objectives, and some of the things that you do get you to those goals and objectives. If you look back over the past, well, since 2011, basically when the comp plan came about. I think it was approved in 2010. But there were some goals and some objectives there as far as land use was concerned, that over the period of years, this planning commission has worked on ordinance amendments. They've worked on some basic land use rezones. They've accomplished a lot of those goals and objectives. I think your direction has been to review what you have. If you think there's something that should be included in the future, in the new plan, they're looking for that guidance. But I think the one thing you have to remember is that this is your plan. It isn't my plan or somebody else's. This is the city's plan. It is, and you as a recommending body to the city council play a large role in it. And I think eventually, when the whole plan is drafted and is in draft form, the planning commission is actually going to be the one that's going to hold a public hearing as far as whether to recommend approval to the city council of that plan. So you're a stakeholder and you're a recommending body, and you're kind of a jack of all and master of none in this whole process, and yet you're not part of that central committee that is charged with coming up with a complete plan. You're part of that.
One thing that caught my eye was a statement that says, do not grant variances to setbacks or maximum lot coverage regulations in shoreland management overlay zoning districts, either for existing or new structures. I remember an instance where we should have paid closer attention to this, because I think we did grant one in an overlay zone.
I don't think you've granted anything that is closer to the shoreline than existing.
Okay.
I don't think you've allowed something to be less than 75 feet or less than what is existing there. I think you're going to continue to wrestle with that, and I think that's a major item that the planning commission should, have some serious discussions about, whether they want to allow variances to increase the size of non-conforming uses. In the past, most of the increases to those non-conforming uses in the shoreland have been either on the back side of the property and or to the side, and not towards the lake per se.
And we haven't really, the maximum lot coverage, we haven't really had any where we've gone over that I recall.
You haven't had anything that tries to increase above the 25%.
Right.
That patio south of town wasn't doing that.
No,
Okay.
and that actually wasn't a variance from the shoreline. That was actually a variance from the wetland,
Wetland, that's right,
which was a little bit different.
yes. Yeah.
Had that circle too.
Did you?
They're in doing the extensive homework. And I'm not sure that it's a purview of planning and zoning, but under gravel mining, on page 4-9, gravel mining, item, under objective 4, policy number 3. Got it?
This one right here?
Yes, yeah, that's it. It says post-retirement surface elevation should allow for eventual reuse of the sites as housing or forest. To me, it doesn't clearly state that should be to the expense of the people doing the mining.
Typically,
And I would think it should be. And again, maybe I'm picking and that's maybe not what you want tonight, but that was one item that.
it certainly could be something that could be added, that any reclamation of those properties should be the responsibility of the permitted authority.
And it's my understanding that's not necessarily included in the existing permits that are already out.
Actually, I think most of the permits are so old that we don't have any new ones since this was even initiated.
Okay. They've started some new gravel pits in the last couple of years, but
Actually, some of the gravel pits that used to be in the city of Breezy are no longer in the city of Breezy.
but on the south side of Bushman, that's still south and east of, what's the road on the?
Ranchette?
Ranchette.
On either side of Ranchette, there are 2 gravel pits.
Yeah.
Right there at the intersection of Bushman and
Yeah,
Ranchette.
and both of those are still within the city, aren't they?
Yes,
But the one isn't active at all.
correct. The one by Sandy's
Yeah,
is
the-
is currently
Well,
inactive.
anyway, it seems to me that that's one of the things we want to do if we're going to issue any more permits. It ought to be part of it.
So they
I would think that the planning commission would have control over that as far as the conditional use permit process, if there was any new ones that came into existing.
So they can't restart that mine back up.
Right.
So what do you want out of us tonight?
Well, if there's anything in these sections that we gave you for the homework that you would not like to see included, please tell us.
Or changed. But I'm sure you'll update page 4-3, residential growth, you'll change that. Is that, it says 2009 to 2020.
That is in the contract. The Sourcewell is supposed to update those numbers. And if I may, when I've read some of what Sourcewell's done other places, because I've asked them to provide examples, I don't know that it's going to look a lot like the format you have right now. So you have easy pages. It's not like we're going to eliminate paragraph 7 of this page. It's going to be in a different format. So
Figure it out different again?
No, the content will be very similar.
Yes.
It will just not be in this format.
Yeah.
I would assume more user-friendly,
that is their goal.
yes, yeah. Yeah, because at times this is a little bit hard to read.
One of the things about it is that comp plan is so long,
Yeah,
it becomes tedious to get through it. And if it were simplified a little bit, I think that would make you a lot more comfortable with it.
I guess I would be hopeful that we would take a more proactive role in pushing forward some of these things. My experience in my limited time here is all we've done is respond to a request. We haven't done anything to facilitate moving ahead. We got in here, and it may not be the purview of this group, but we're supposed to have a road improvement program back and I have heard nothing of a plan for paving new roads. Maybe there is one, but
I can tell you that there is a group of folks that maybe the gentleman to your right could help you out with, but there is a committee that is focusing on a road improvement plan.
okay.
The road committee does meet with Public Works. Unfortunately, you, as planning and zoning, don't really get to see the fruits of that labor.
Okay.
Those are items that the road committee discuss with Public Works, the city administrator.
Okay.
We come to conclusions of the plan that we want to move forward with. We present it to the city council
Okay.
to move forward with such plans.
Okay.
So,
That's fine.
yep. So there are some things that might be done that aren't really at the P and Z level, but are still revolving around.
Like sewer, it's another example, I would assume. Huh?
You will see that in the draft plan that comes before this committee. I think we're talking September. But I think your comments about what happens with the gravel pit are exactly what we were talking about. Making sure that there are procedures in place to protect the city. And when you talk about just overall being ahead of the game, putting this together is our defense when we talk about the different zoning classifications. When a resident says, well, why do you have this requirement? Well, we can refer to the comprehensive plan and say, this isn't just something we sat down and drew up one night. We've been working on this for years, and these details help us in explaining to residents why we have different requirements for an R3 versus an urban reserve or a wooded or some of the 5-acre lot we just allowed in that situation there. I can tell you that Jerry didn't just sit down with that applicant and drew up a plan. There was a lot of work going on and talking about rezoning or looking at different options. And a lot of it's based, in my opinion, on the comprehensive plan that we have that defends it, why we're doing that.
Would it be fair to say that a lot of inquiries that come into City Hall, not only are you referring to the ordinances of what governs us today, but you're also considering what the comp plan says of what we should be doing tomorrow?
Absolutely. If somebody were to come into the office and say, well, I've got 40 acres of land over here and it's zoned estate lots, and I want to get it to R3, the first thing we would look at is that future land use map. And we'd probably make a determination that the request is a spot zone out in the middle of nowhere and probably shouldn't be granted with smaller lot sizes without sewer. So we would fall back on that as a reason to say that's not a very good idea. You can make the request, but it's probably not going to have a lot of merit to it because of the comp plan and the future land use plan that's in the comp plan.
Could I just point out a section that I think I was thinking about? It's on page 412, objective 8, and it's number 3. It obviously says zoning amendments to prevent land use incompatibilities and potentially remedy existing ones, amend the zoning ordinance to do those 3 bullet points. I know I'm catching you off guard, but is that something that we've done or that we need to do yet?
Absolutely, we do this.
Okay,
We look at disputes between landowners, and we look at zoning and how land can be used, and we don't try to put a residential zone right up next to a commercial zone. We also use the conditional use permit process quite heavily in Breezy, and that provides some conditions, like you might want to put screening on something, you might want to plant trees, or you might want to do landscaping that protects not only the existing property, but the adjacent properties.
so it didn't necessarily take an amended ordinance?
No, it doesn't necessarily take an amended ordinance.
Okay.
I think, I'll give you an example of an amended ordinance that happened years ago. At one time, you could do with a conditional use permit, you could do rentals more than 4 times a year. That went through a series of hearings after a request to do a vacation rental property in an R3 zone. And neighborhood conflict was, it was basically assumed based on that proposal. And there was a total ordinance change that didn't allow vacation rentals in any residentially zoned areas. So it gets used when it's necessary. Also, if we got a bunch of requests for, say, variances from setbacks from streets, you might want to look at that setback to see if that really is something that's real. And maybe the 40-foot setback is too much, and maybe it could be, by a zoning amendment, could be reduced down to 30 or 35.
Would the animal husbandry issue be an example of that also?
That is an example of that also. Although the planning commission didn't have the final say on that, where that
Right.
went,
Right,
but they did make a recommendation as
Yes.
far as changing the ordinance to allow for it in a less restrict, or more restrictive way than it had been in the existing ordinance. But that does get used quite often.
anything, well, the other question I was gonna ask is, how much time do we have to provide input on this? I'm wondering if Peggy and Larry will have an opportunity to, or maybe they have, provide input.
I think Peggy has indicated that she's not necessarily so worried about the wording in these documents, but that there should be a lot more emphasis placed on trails, pedestrian trails. That was the input I saw in an email.
Okay.
I think Larry probably has some too, but I think you've got some time. I didn't want to leave this thing lay for 6 months and then expect you to pick it up and get it done.
Could we place it on our next meeting agenda?
Sure.
Okay.
In other words, do more homework and
Well, at least think about there's so much here, you know.
understand.
Pardon?
Understand. And unless like we look at this quite often. I know that most folks don't.
And we should. I mean, there's really great guidance in this, which obviously you know because you're using it every day. But it ought to be guidance to us in our decision making.
The comprehensive plan that we have, in my opinion, is pretty good.
Anything else?
I guess not.
Now we can go to other. Is there other? Anything?
I don't have anything. Well, okay, no, wait a minute.
You already said you don't have any.
Okay. It was a specific and
Go ahead, go ahead.
it was what you and I talked about on the way over. The attempt to fence or shield from, right down here in County 11.
I'm gonna do that.
County 11 and Ski Chalet, where the storage place, the boat place there has cleared all that land, cleared all the trees out, put in a whole bunch of fill, and they really haven't done much since then. But is there any way we can encourage them to put some kind of tree line back along the edge of the property? Right now, it's just a cleared, empty lot. And I checked when they first started clearing it, and I was told by you guys that it was all legal and according to Hoyle, and they could clear the land.
Well, and that's again, it's a reflection of a change in the ordinance. Because it was airport zoned, and the airport requested that any property that was over there that could be cleared of trees to protect the airport. So there wasn't a zoning amendment made.
No. That was not anywhere near, I mean, they cleared the whole lot.
I appreciate that,
Okay, and they put in fill.
right.
And they made a mess of the roads while they were doing the fill.
But they were allowed to clear cut that piece of property because of the zoning. If that would have been a residential
They were allowed to do it because it was zoned commercial industrial.
airport,
Well,
Airport is commercial.
okay, well, I was told commercial, and I didn't think it had anything to do with the airport. They were doing it because they wanted to expand their land, and that's fine. I have no problem, expand their use, but I'm saying, okay, if they can't put up 60, 70-foot trees, they can put up, hedges or whatever.
okay. I think you can make,
It's an eyesore across from the cemetery. Now, the airport itself is a great neighbor to the cemetery. They've cleared out and they've helped the cemetery and they put up the split rail fences. But the land right on the corner, and it's okay, but if we talk about fencing it and shielding it to keep the up north look or the whatever look, will we have any recourse to encourage them to do it?
I think you can, at this point today, just as it sits vacant,
Yeah.
I don't think you have a lot of recourse other than to say, do you think it would be a good idea to put some screening up?
The only thing, Jerry, though,
I think if in fact he were to apply for a permit to do something, then I think you've got the issue of, can you attach that onto the permit?
Okay.
do you know if that parcel is adjoined to the parcels that have the building structures on them?
It is. Well, it's owned by the same person. I couldn't tell you if it's a separate
Are
lot.
they gonna have to get a permit to rebuild their one building that collapsed with the snow?
They will need a building permit to do that, yes.
Got 'em.
When that parcel was cleared, obviously they had the right to do so. And I think where Tracy's, Mr. Donovan's getting to is that the use of that property has changed and now is allowing storage on there.
Well, right now,
Now
there's
that-
nothing on it. I mean,
Well,
Actually, there is,
storage
Tracy,
items.
I call it the place for misfit boats.
There are items being stored on
Okay,
there
all
for
right, I
business
didn't know.
purposes.
Yeah.
Do we have recourse to ask for screening?
My opinion, no. I think you have to, if that's the direction you'd like to take, I'd like to have a conversation with the gentleman to talk about sprucing it up and making it look like something. And get some future plans off of him, have him come in front of you guys.
They have, whoever, has done a nice job at the south end. They've got kind of a garden area in there, and they've done a lot of, they've spruced it up over what it used to be, there's no doubt about it. But I just was concerned about that last 200 feet that they clear cut and then put in fill, and now it's just a big mound of fill.
It is actually consolidated to one parcel.
My opinion is that if you've got an issue with it, ask them to come in and talk to you about it, quite
I
frankly.
don't know if it's valid to have an issue. If it says here in the objectives that Joe read, that we want to try to shield where it is adjacent to a residential area, we want to try to shield it appropriately.
To keep you up north.
Yeah, well, yeah, whether you want to call it up north or just
That's actually what the
urban
comprehensive
nice.
plan.
So you had to have a permit to put the extra fill in, right? Isn't there a limit on how much fill you can put in?
Perhaps a conference would be the best way.
Absolutely, I don't think,
Because they've been not a bad neighbor as far as I'm concerned. I mean, not on the street, but they're not a bad neighbor, but I just think of the people that live right across the street, and then I think of the road up to the cemetery. And it's very, very nice at the end of the airport runway, and it's very, very nice on the other side. But that could be an eyesore.
do you want me to ask him to come in? In front of the planning commission?
Well, maybe we better do more homework to find out what I don't want to be a,
Bad neighbor.
yeah, I don't want to be a bad neighbor.
I think would it be appropriate for us to inquire what his future plans are
I think that's appropriate.
and get a feel for where.
That's where I was trying to go with it.
He may be planning on building with redoing one building.
Yeah.
He might be planning on building three
Yeah,
more buildings out there. And he says, and he might come back and say, in 2 years, I'm gonna have it all done.
Yeah.
Might solve a lot of our
Okay.
issues. Is that something that,
Or he might say this is going to be a place for boats and trailers, and that might give us a different outlook on this.
so is the committee asking staff to inquire of the property owner's future
I'm
development
just
plans?
one. If you guys want to do it,
I was just looking at the airport. It does say prohibited, excluded auto salvage junkyards. So,
Yeah, I don't think you can classify it as a junkyard.
no.
No, it's storage of stuff.
Depends what time of year it is.
Roger, what do you think of what Mike is suggesting?
I don't know the gentleman, so.
well, I don't either, but
This, more importantly, Jerry, what do you think of what Mike is suggesting?
Well, I think-
Is that something that you're open to doing?
are we overstepping?
I'm comfortable going to the gentleman and telling him there's some concern about the looks of the property, and we would like to understand what your future plans are for the property. I'm comfortable doing that. I'm not comfortable going and telling him that you're in violation of the ordinance that isn't there. That I'm not comfortable with. But I'd rather work with the man than cause adversity.
And it seems to me that's Mike's interest in the comment,
Well, this isn't my meeting.
right?
Okay, I would hope that you, Mr. Chairman, would you ask the city to set up such a meeting? Now, would that be at a normally scheduled planning and zoning meeting, or?
I don't even think you need to.
The first thing I would do would have the conversation with him privately in my office.
And it would be just you and,
Right.
okay.
In the past, sometimes I've asked concerned council members and or planning commissioners to sit in on that meeting.
I'd be happy to sit in if you, and then again, maybe you don't want me.
You're the ones that's expressing the most concern about it. And quite frankly, if you hear it from the horse's mouth, it's a lot easier than getting it secondhand sometimes.
Well,
And if I can facilitate a meeting between you and me and the gentleman that owns that piece of property, I think that's appropriate. I do know that facilitating that meeting within the next 2 months is going to be very hard.
but it's his busy time and he's got a building that he lost too. So I
Exactly.
understand, I appreciate that, so maybe later in the summer.
See the building went down?
Oh, he had one of his buildings, the snow load caved the roof in. It was a building built by the previous owners.
Do we have consensus that that's the right approach?
I don't need direction. I can,
Okay. Good deal.
I'll take it under, put it under my hat and do it.
Good deal. Thank you, Jerry.
If need be,
Thank you,
can
Michael.
invite me or any other council member if wish.
The only input I've got to that is it's kind of it's our introduction to Breezy Point from the north. It's kind of the first thing you see coming into Breezy Point. And it seems like he's aware of that. He's tried to make the rest of the place look pretty nice. As good as you can do with the storage.
That's probably better wording.
I just don't think he's done yet. I mean, the construction.
Probably not.
No,
is still occurring out there, filling and grading and, I mean, but to the point of the planning commission, I mean, it certainly wouldn't be harmful to go say that we're just, because of the visibility, we're just talking about, want to know in case citizens ask.
And I think the reason that Tracy and I began talking about it is there is a part of the comprehensive plan that talks about this. That commercial enterprises we should be maintaining the up north look of the community, even in the commercial areas, as you're doing, David, with the North Star Center.
No, I understand exactly. I sometimes wonder what the definition of up north means.
I think-
see you struggle with that as well in your deliberation.
When you solve it, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows what that definition is. And quite frankly, it's an individual's interpretation. There's not a consensus. It's what each individual interprets it to mean. And that is very hard to enforce.
It's like one time somebody asked me, what is earth tone in Minnesota when it's snow here 6 months? Can we build white? Is white?
It's white.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna be up north on Thursday.
Okay, one more.
Yes, sir.
What authority do we have, or
Thank you.
does the city have? There is one particular property right next to the Breezy Point Resort gate that looks like an absolute pit. And you come down the hill and you see that. What can we do?
Where is it?
It's the first little cabin house right across from the hardware store at the, right adjacent to the gate. You look at it when you look at it tomorrow by day.
Huh?
One of the brush problems last year.
Oh,
I don't know, but it looks like they've tried to improve the cabin itself, but they got all their crap piled in the backyard, which is on the street side. And I don't know what we can or should or what. If I were the resort owner, I would not be very happy. So,
You have an intern coming this summer, right?
We've been allowed to hire one, but no one's applied yet.
Oh,
We had one living with us for a couple of years when we were in Buffalo, and That's what she did. She wrote up warnings and stuff like that. It's a good introduction for her. Now she's a city planner.
Anyway,
will-
does planning, do we have any responsibility or authority?
I don't think so.
If we can find that there's a violation of the ordinance, yes.
Okay.
But if it's a pile of brush that's sitting there,
Now, this is like old furniture and household stuff, and maybe they're remodeling, who knows? It's been an eyesore as long as I can remember.
you know, if somebody tells you that they've got lawn furniture out in their front yard, and that's what they're using it for, I have a hell of a time going and telling them they have to move
Look
it.
at it tomorrow or the next day.
I will, and if there's a violation of the ordinance, if I can find an ordinance violation,
Okay,
we can do something about
I
it.
just,
And if you can't, you let us know that we need to create one?
Yeah, you can create one. Careful what you legislate, though, you might have to enforce it.
thank you,
Well,
sir.
Joe,
have we taken,
can I ask
yes,
you a
sir,
question?
Roger.
Now that this was brought up about that piece of property, there's a area on North Lakeview Drive, just north of the landing, the city landing. Go on down the hill, about the second home on the left, which has
Toys.
4 or 5 snowmobiles, golf cart, bikes, several cars, several trailers, and they've been there in the front. You know which one I'm talking about?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's the only one there that has all of that. There appears that there's got to be some issue there with all of this accumulation of stuff. I mean, it's just been sitting there, you know, for a year and a half now. Side yard, front yard, driveway. You can't miss it if you go on down the hill and take a look at it. But I'm wondering if there's some issue on there in regards to the length of time this material can sit there. I mean, you can have your car there and things that move in and out and so forth, but these snowmobiles and dirt bikes and golf cart and regular trailers and boat and all of this has been sitting there for a long, long time. And I don't know if there's an issue that can be addressed to these people.
Without looking at it, I can't tell you, Roger. The other thing that gets involved in this is getting on-site, figuring out if those vehicles, one of the things you're talking about is vehicles and trailers and that type of thing. If they're licensed, if they have a current license on them, it's pretty hard to do some things with it.
Well, they probably do. I mean, the snowmobiles have a license, the dirt bikes have a license.
But if they haven't moved any place and it's just sitting around as a junkyard, then yeah, you probably can do something.
I mean, how do you determine as a junkyard? I mean, what's some person's junk is the other person's delicacy.
Now you're getting into really the tough part of careful what you legislate because you might have to enforce it, and it becomes very hard.
Gray area, but as time goes on and the community grows and additional ordinances come into effect to enhance the community and so forth. You know, I think you gotta look at that as you go along. You can't live this up north, you know, mentality sometimes.
That is the up north feel in a lot of places.
If a home is in a single-family residential, is there any limit to how many people can be living in the house if they are not part of one family? I don't know, I'm asking. It looks to me like there are probably, 15 people living in that house.
You got a lot of toys.
I don't know, maybe
Yeah, I go
we're
by there
overstepping.
today.
Tell me if we're overstepping our bounds, that's what I'm asking.
Well, I think you may be getting close.
Well, if it's residential, single family, is there any kind of a restriction?
There's not a restriction as far as how many people can be in a single family house. Now, there is some county health standards and whatever as far as how many people can be, depending on the number of bedrooms, and, the size of facilities and those type of things.
Should be based on bedrooms, the amount of living area and so forth, and the amount of people you can have.
But we don't have anything in our ordinance that specifies you can have 5 or 6, or 2 or 1.
Some cities
We talk
do-
about dogs and cats, but we don't talk about kids.
Some cities do regulate the number of non,
Well, anyway, so
Related
think
individual.
about it.
the other part of it is it's important, city works in cycles. All cities, Minnesota, as we talked about snow earlier, springtime is when the snow goes away and you see your neighbors.
Well, what
Arguments,
Ryan's
so
referring to is.
Well, I'm just saying, the other part of it is, Tracy, the city of Breezy Point does not have an individual going out doing code enforcement. We work on a complaint basis. Complaints are held confidential, but we don't go out and look for issues. And our ordinance is quite unique in how it talks about vegetation and how your neighbor's discretions go away once vegetation grows up.
This one neighbor next to me that just.
We know
There
you.
goes the neighborhood. I think we've been, well, I think we're still in item H, and just, were we in other?
You were another.
Okay, we're in other, we're done with other. I'll move to open forum number 2. Would anyone like to speak during open forum number 2? I think we've kind of done that already. So I will close open forum number 2, and.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
before you go any further, I would like to move the next planning commission meeting from the 14th to the 7th.
I'll be gone.
You would have been gone for the 14th, so.
Right.
Okay.
I'll be 5th to the 27th. Larry should be back by then, huh?
I think I heard Tracy say he's on his way.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Stuck in the
Well,
snow?
welcome back.
It's all right with me.
Looks good. The 7th.
My birthday.
Good thing you're gonna be gone. Meeting's adjourned.
Actually,
Oh,
we have a
sorry.
motion to that effect and
Oh,
second for
okay.
a regular meeting, that way I
Good.
can avoid publication costs.
I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we adjourn.
No,
no.
change the meeting date.
I would move that we change the meeting to May the 7th at 7.
Is that Tuesday?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have
I'll
a second?
second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same?
Do you already have a planned agenda for that?
Motion.
Do you already have a planned agenda? Like, could it still be canceled though, due to lack of agenda?
It could still be canceled.
Okay.
Oh, okay,
I think we're going to see some activities.
Okay.
okay.
All right.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Maybe some animal husbandry going on.
You don't want to be so lucky.